The First World War ended precisely at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. And just one moment before the bells sounded and the guns fell silent, an American private named Henry Gunther would fall. Henry Nicholas John Gunther was born on the 6th of June, 1895, in Baltimore, Maryland, to German and American parents, and grew up in a close-knit community of German immigrants. Upon completing his education, he found work as a bookkeeper and clerk at the National Bank of Baltimore. When America entered the war in April of 1917, many Americans of German heritage, including Gunther's family, became the target of anti-German sentiment, with their loyalty to the United States coming into question, meaning Gunther had little interest in military service. Though in September of 1917, much to his disdain, the 23-year-old received his draft notice. After completing 5 months of training, Gunther shipped out with the 313th Infantry Regiment in July of 1918, destined for the battlefields of France. Upon arriving in Europe, the army would put his accounting skills to use, assigning him as a supply sergeant for A Company. Though everything would soon change for Gunther, after he had written a letter home to a friend, describing the horrors of the trenches and advising him to avoid frontline service. Unfortunately for Gunther, the army postal censor intercepted the letter and passed it on to his commanding officer. For this perceivably unpatriotic act, he was demoted to private, removed from supply, and made a rifleman on the front lines. Gunther's timing could not have been worse, as the 313th Regiment began almost 60 days of continuous combat during the bloody Meuse-Argonne offensive. Though he would manage to survive this period unscathed, except for a noticeable change in mood, said to have become noticeably more withdrawn as the fighting continued. According to his companions, Gunther had pondered a great deal over his reduction in rank, and became obsessed with a determination to earn back the respect of officers and fellow soldiers, having been particularly worried that others suspected him of being a German sympathiser. Just after 5 a.m. on November 11th, 1918, British, French and German negotiators signed an armistice to end the war. Under the agreement, all hostilities would cease at precisely 11 a.m. The 6-hour delay was intended to allow time for news of the war's end to reach all remote battlefields. On the morning of November 11th, Gunther's outfit, A Company, had received orders to capture the village of Villiers-devant-Chemont, 12 miles north of Verdun. At 9:30 a.m., just 90 minutes before the ceasefire, the men marched forward towards their objective, with bayonets fixed, when suddenly, German artillery began blasting their position, resulting in multiple casualties. Just before 11 a.m., word reached the men that the armistice had been signed and was shortly due to take effect. But along with that message came another, from Brigadier General William Nicholson, stating that there will be absolutely no let-up until 11 a.m. Once A Company reached their objective, they quickly spotted 2 German machine gun positions at the edge of the village. They next proceeded to lay still in cover, opposite the guns, counting down the moments until the war was over, with the Germans also remaining steadfast and holding their fire. Suddenly, Gunther sprang up from cover and charged toward the enemy position. His fellow soldiers began to shout for him to stop, while the German machine gunners also stood up and waved, urging him to turn around. Undeterred, he continued to charge and fired a shot, forcing the Germans to return fire. A single bullet would strike Gunther in the left temple, killing him instantly. According to most sources, he had died at 10:59 a.m., 1 minute before the armistice. Those who were present had sworn the rumbling of the artillery had ceased the very moment that his body hit the earth, with General Pershing recording him as the last American combat fatality of the conflict. Gunther would be buried in France, and posthumously promoted back to sergeant, and awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. In 1923, his remains were exhumed from a military plot in France and returned to the United States, where they were interred at the Most Holy Cemetery in Baltimore. In 2008, a French memorial was dedicated to Gunther, near the spot where he had died. And on Veterans Day in 2010, marking the 92nd anniversary of Gunther's death, a memorial plaque was unveiled at his gravesite.